You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli-Skiing and Fat Tire Amber Ale.
Cheers, man. Well, we are drinking Fat Tires in the RMU Blackcomb Bar, which is a pretty nice space. It's after hours. We're sitting in front of the ski wall and create a nice little mental image for the people listening.
Nice.
We're sitting on these funky chairs. I don't know where you got these. They're nice.
Collector's items.
Are they?
Yep.
Yeah. But this is a good spot, man. This is where I originally had the idea of doing like live podcast episodes. It's right here on this little elevated stage sort of thing. You know? And now we're doing it.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Two guys alone in a bar.
Yeah, after hours with a whole wall of whiskey and a Fat Tire on tap. Are we going to be here in the morning?
We're not getting into the whiskey.
Well, I'm glad you finally made it on the podcast. We've had many conversations, and now is the time. And like I told you before, I haven't asked you or haven't talked to you about specific things for a very specific reason, because I've been saving them for this.
Yeah.
Right? We've been friends for what? Good year. Solid year. It's been a year since RMU Blackcomb opened, right?
Yeah.
Hung out a lot, had lots of conversations, lots of beers, lots of late nights, lots of chairlift rides. I want to know the history, the story behind RMU. I know what you've been doing lately, but I don't know how did you come to be sitting in that green collector's item?
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think, first of all, it's an honor to be sitting here on this podcast in this green collector's item. Yeah, and I'm pretty stoked at the opportunity to sit down and chat with you here. But I think, yeah, a lot of people ask us our story quite a bit because they're interested. People are like, it's funny, especially the more the company's grown. People seem to be more and more intrigued on like how we got from A to B.
I am.
Yeah.
Like, for sure, there's a lot of people, like, from what you've done, what you've accomplished, and where you've taken this company from just building skis in your garage to where you are now, people are like, something's got to be up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and the funny thing is that, like, watching the whole story kind of unfold in real life, it's interesting to be here 15 years later, right? Mm-hmm. And then have some of these things thrown at you where it's like, people are like, what is this? Like,
people only see what they see, and based on their knowledge, people know what they've seen and heard, right? So based on what their knowledge of how people have gotten to where they are, something's got to be up.
It starts not making sense.
Right.
But,
because there seems to be like, and I've had that thought too. I'm like, how does he do it? Right? How have he gotten to this point? So when did this whole idea of RMU start? What was what was that all about?
So my background is I was a fireman. That was my career path.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's pretty important for a lot of reasons, and I didn't even realize it at the time. But there's a mindset that comes from that career path, and it's played more and more into my decision making, into a lot of like the company's strategy, like who I am as a person. And then ultimately, like a lot of the tougher questions that the business has to answer have all been back to that career path, right?
What kind of mindset are you talking about?
I mean, there's just a lot, like especially like company ethics as you start to grow, like why you're growing, like what are you doing? And those have been questions that recently, like you have to ask yourself, like what are we doing this for? Like where is this business going? Like, who do we want to be? And that all really came back to like that start as from the firehouse, right? And a lot of people, they'll ask, like, hey, like, what makes you tick? Like, what's this all about, right? Like, is it about selling more skis or, and there is like a lot of people will ask, the number one question I get is like, how many skis are you selling? Are you selling more than so-and-so or so-and-so? And it's like, that's not, ultimately for us, like that's not what it's about, which is interesting. So I'll take you back. Like at this point, I think, I started volunteering. Like that's how I got into the firehouse. I was pretty thankful for that because it kept me out of trouble as a kid. Like I met some good people, and then I got into wildfire in that arena. It's pretty nuts. Like it's a crazy career path, and it's only gotten crazier and crazier and crazier. Especially like
the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. What's happening, and and even at the time when I was in it, I had some of the older guys telling me, they're like, Mike, like you'll never see fire like this. This is unheard of. This is unprecedented. And from when I got out of it to where it is now is just even crazier, right? It's like 5x what we were seeing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I finally progressed from wildfire. I got the certifications. I was working for what's called like a structure department. And I was working on an engine, which is, again, like there's like, you can go kind of two routes. Like you can go the fire route, or you can go the medical route. And I did have like a good amount of medical training, but I was able to work my way up. And I was, when I left, I was like on a ladder truck, that's where you want to be.
Fire truck with the ladder.
It is like
saving cats from trees.
Yeah. We actually did save. Dog on a roof. Yeah.
Dog on a roof. Yeah. How'd it get up there?
We're like, how'd you get up here, man? Yeah.
For real?
Yeah, for real. Yeah, it was on the news. They love dogs on a roof. Yeah. But so the really good thing about that, I actually have this really vivid memory. Like I was a skier growing up, and I remember passing the fire engine for Lake Dillon Fire Rescue. It was called the Wizard. It was this bright yellow fire truck, right? And I was like, man, like I had heard about their schedule. I was like, these guys work, they have 2 days on, they have 4 days off. Like that's like the ultimate skier schedule. And like literally like 5 years later, after going through all these courses, and it's super competitive to get a job in the fire service. Like it's like I went to some testings, and it was like 1,000 other people applying for one job.
Really?
Yeah, like crazy competitive. And 5 years later, I was riding backwards on that engine with my first day at Lake Dillon Fire Rescue. Like just really wild.
Like I made it.
Yeah, it's exactly where I wanted to be. But with that schedule, so you're working 2 days, 48 hours straight, and then you have 96 off. So I'm skiing a lot, I'm riding snowmobiles, I'm having a time. And that's what gave us the idea. We had all this time, right? We're like, wow, I got 4 days. Like, what can we do? So we started building skis.
Really? It was just like, let's see if we can build a ski.
Yeah, that's really...
As simple as that, eh?
It was as simple as that. It was just like us sitting here drinking beers. Like, cool to figure it out.
Yeah.
How hard could it be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Turns out it's really hard. So much that goes into it.
So what's the process then? So you're fighting fires, and you're like, let's build some skis. So first steps.
Yeah, and there is no process. Like there's no intention of doing anything other than that.
You just wanted to build some skis in your basement, try them out, just mess around, and just have a good time.
And there's a whole community. I mean, there's lots of people that do that and stay at that level.
Yeah. I know, Dave Erb, who runs POW Canada.
Yeah.
He told you, did he tell you?
I've had some conversations about it.
He had a press in his basement.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you going to do with that? He's like, I don't know, I want to make my own skis. Like, that's fascinating to me. I've never been that guy who's like, I'm going to make something.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, there's a passion for skiing there. And it goes into the equipment. Like there's a lot of people who are just very passionate about equipment, but I think I was just like kind of like naturally intrigued about them.
So how did the first pair turn out?
Yeah, we didn't even ski it.
They're crap.
Yeah, I'll show it to you one day. It's so.
Oh, you still have it?
Yeah.
Is it up here?
Yeah. It's in Colorado right now. But it's we didn't even finish it. Like the flex is completely off. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is 2008, so there's not a lot of information out. And you got to think, like, to go into this mindset of like how do you build a ski? Like there's so many variables on the thickness of the core, the type of wood you're using, like the difference between like a maple and a poplar, and how does that affect the ski? And then we're building all this machinery ourselves. Like this is all hand built. Our first ski press was like welded up, like little 2x2 pieces of metal. And we didn't know the pressure, right? Like heat, epoxy, the kind of epoxy, the different fiberglass. So we have no clue. Like we're just like, all right, like I think this is gonna be close.
Trial and error. Did you have any like basis or like, you know what I mean? Like right now, if I want to fix my truck, I'm going on YouTube University and I'm gonna get a little guideline to figure out how to fix my replace my alternator. Or yesterday, how the hell do I get this light fixture off and I put a light in? Just something simple like that. Is there anything like that online where you can be like,
there was I actually
reference?
had a book about fiberglass, and a lot of the marine information was the most helpful. And then I got a lot of information from
marine as in like boats and stuff?
Yeah. For fiberglass. And I got a lot of information from the timber industry. So I was like studying different kinds of woods and things like that. And that was pretty interesting, just to learn like modules of elasticity, and you can go off the deep end with different kinds of wood and flex patterns. And
who is it? Is this just you?
This is me, a couple guys from the firehouse, Luke. You know, we're just drinking beers.
Just drinking beers and doing something fun, engaging your brains and having a reason to hang out.
Yeah, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
And so we built like this one like horrible ski, and we didn't really think anything of it other than we should probably use like more fiberglass or more wood because it was super soft. Like we were way off on that. And then the way that we finished it wasn't great. So we're like, all right, maybe we'll use like the router differently to do that. And we never even thought about mounting it. So we pressed another one, and we're pressing single skis because we didn't have a press big enough to like
to do a pair.
Yeah, to do two pairs. Yeah.
So you're having they're a little off. Each ski isn't the same as the other ski kind of thing. So how many tries did you go until you actually mounted a pair up?
I think we had like a pretty skiable ski at our third pair.
Really?
Yeah. And it's terrifying when we mounted it up and you like double check the binding, you know, you're like, this thing's really in there. And then you go to ski it, and in my mind I had this image of the ski just exploding
under your foot,
noodling apart or something, you know?
Yeah.
And
unraveling.
Yeah. And I couldn't believe it. Like it actually skied pretty well.
What was that feeling like when you're like, because I know just from like a day, say I've been working all day and I get to the top of the gondola, I may be uploading at like 2:30. Like today you went up at like 2 o'clock. You're like, you want to go? I'm like, I don't think I have time. But even just going up at 2 and just doing one lap, just feeling the skis under your feet, little wind in your face, it's like instant gratification. All right, good, I'm good.
Yeah.
But when you get on a pair of skis that you built and then you push off on those poles and you start moving and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Do you remember that moment?
Oh, totally.
Is it terrifying or exhilarating, exciting?
Terrifying. Yeah, terrifying.
I would have been like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah. And then after like 4 or 5 turns, it started to get more like, you know, you're like, okay, this is actually going to stay together. But then the question was like, how long is it going to stay together? So we're out like, we're out skiing the resorts, and again, like we're learning, like we know nothing about ski building. Yeah. And like everything, like every little detail, like putting graphics on skis, like we didn't know how to do that. You know what I mean? Like to base bevel and the structure, like we didn't know how to do that.
Was all of this trial and error? Did you ever?
Well, they're like each pair of skis we're pressing is evolving. Yeah. And you're like getting more and more curious because we're like, you can actually ski these things. You know, like this is incredible. But to build a ski yourself is a couple $100. Like it's not something. It's expensive. It's not. You know. I think I'm like 21 or 22 at this point. So there's not like to keep doing this. You gotta. I could barely afford skis on my own, you know? So I'm like trying to like press skis.
Is that one of the reasons why you wanted to start building them?
No, it was...
no, we could save some cash.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You know what? Yeah, we'll just press them our own, these really crappy noodly skis.
Right.
Nobody wants.
So then let's move fast forward, right? So you do a bunch. Like how do you, like the evolution is obviously step by step by step, but what was the next major phase? Like what made you decide like, hey, let's make a bunch of these?
Yeah, so here's what happens. So you start pressing a couple for your friends, and then next thing you know, like I remember we got some phone calls like, hey, I heard you guys are pressing skis. Could you build me this? And we're like, where'd you get our number?
Yeah.
And
it's just people that are like, they have something specific in mind and they want you to try and do that for them.
yeah, they had.
Like, I need you to maybe build the Joe Smith Pro model.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, yeah, specific skis that were like, they had dimensions in their mind that they wanted to build, or, like different uses, things like that. Or, hey, there's these guys that have a press in Dillon, like they could probably build you that. And that's kind of what was happening. And so it was like very much like custom orders that were coming in, and, all of a sudden, like.
And is this the same 4 guys that started with you?
Yeah, it's a group of us. I'd say probably like 6 or 7, and,
Yeah.
And again, like business sense, like 0. Like I didn't even know what an invoice was at this point, right?
You're just building skis and
Yeah.
someone wants a pair of skis. Yeah, cool. We'll do it for them. We'll just give me like a couple $100 in cash.
So this is like 2008, 2009, and then
Was the name in place then?
yeah, the name again, like it was like, so our garage, it was a garage that was converted, it's a ski town, so it was converted into like a living area, and it was literally kind of underground, right? And so that's kind of how it started. It was like, well, like, where can I get this press? Oh, there's these guys that have this press underground in Dillon Valley, like, the Rocky Mountain guys got it. Yeah, I know there's a press up in Silverthorne, those guys, like, and then kind of all those words came together, and it was like people were calling us the Rocky Mountain Underground guys.
Oh, really? So it was like a nickname that was dubbed on you.
Yeah.
You didn't have to sit around and choose that name.
Yeah, and it was interesting, like, as we started, like, at one point we're like, okay, like, I think we could actually sell a couple of these. Like, what if we did like a production run? So we built 30 skis. And
Are you the leader of the group at this point in time? Are you like leading the movement?
I bought a ski press for $300, or the metal for a ski press for $300. I bought like some used metal. Mm-hmm. That's my founding status.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is pretty crazy, right? Like people are like, how much did you guys start with the ski company with? I'm like, $300.
Yeah.
And just to like think back to that.
Yeah.
And I even think at that point I was like, whew, that's a lot of money.
It still is.
Yeah, I think I can swing it.
People in a ski town, man, $300.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cash. Just think, with $300, people listening, you could end up with like an international bar company. Bar/ski shop.
Right. So yeah, I guess I think we built 30 skis was our first. That was like our first production run.
Yeah, what was that ski called?
It was called the DM. And
as in like before DMs were a thing?
Yeah, well, not like DM,
like Carpe?
Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of funny now.
Yeah.
And then we turned that $30. We sold all 30 skis, and then we turned it into 75.
And then
to 150.
That's a third year was 150.
Yeah.
And then
that goes to 300.
Mm-hmm. So as it's growing, are you still firefighting?
Yeah, and not even. I guess I didn't even think about. I think by the time we got to 300 skis, like that was like, I was like, all right, like this is
a business.
This is becoming a little bit more than just,
And then how
fun.
many of the 7 guys have dropped off by this point?
Yeah, and it's like as the people who are still actively working in the business, me and Luke, and then
Luke who?
Luke Ocho Allen. Yeah.
Just for the people listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
was he a firefighter too?
No, ski coach.
Mm-hmm. And you're just a buddy? You're just buddies from the beginning and like...
Yeah, I met skiing, just friends. Like,
hey, I got this cool thing in my house. You want to check it out?
Yeah, I texted him. I was like, hey, man, got a ski press. You should come check it out.
Yeah.
He's like, cool, I'm on my way.
It's sweet.
That seems random, but sure, yeah.
Yeah,
coming over.
Yeah, I'm down.
The thing is, though, is that, it kind of makes sense, like, how you can grow from, 30 pairs to 75. 75 to 150, but these dollar amounts are starting to go up, and
the amount that you're having to invest in materials,
yeah,
and then also the money you're getting back. You're like, oh well, what are we charging for this ski now?
So we were painting houses. Like that's how we like raised money for the first 30 skis. We painted houses.
So you worked as a fireman, and then on those other days off, you would paint houses.
We'd go paint for whatever, the 4 days. And then we'd go to work at night and press the skis. On top of that, and answering emails and everything. And that gets us to like, I think we get to like 75 pairs, and we get to like, I think we're like trying to pay for the 150, and we're like 15 grand short. We're like, how are we going to pull this off, And we ended up painting like this giant monstrosity of a house, and it comes through, funds the bills last minute. We never really told our factory about it at that point.
So at this point, were you?
So we started.
You weren't pressing them yourself?
No, as we started to get into production, I'd known Tim and Tracy from Never Summer, and
that's a snowboard brand.
Yeah, and we had thought, we're like, you know what, like the amount of work that we're putting into production, like to get a quality product like that is more important.
So that's like one of the big quantum leaps of your business, right? It's
it was the first time we got into like a real production house. The skis came out as something that's like, this is a real.
And this is
product.
What, third year, fourth year?
Yeah, I think it's our third year.
150.
Yeah, somewhere like right around 150 pairs.
And you're like, all right, it's too much work for us to do this now.
Right.
And then we need to outsource this.
And we're still building skis ourselves. Like we still have our
prototypes and that kind of stuff, or what?
Yeah, I mean, we're still doing some stuff. Like some of our custom gigs are still going through. Like we're still building 5 or 6 pairs of skis a day at this point, And we've got some production models that are coming out. And then, we're painting houses. Like we're like doing everything we can to fund these things. And that's where just like, it's really interesting because you see these brands and the human element is completely removed from them, right? And then I watch like us as like individuals, like growing up, trying to raise money to build these skis, like something that we're just passionate about. And then learning business along the way. And it was pretty crazy, man. Like looking back on it, I'm like, I don't know how we pulled that off. But it gets to a point, right? So we get up to like 300 pairs, like we're like doubling this each year. And the ski quality is getting better and better. Like we're still learning some stuff. There's a lot of difference in materials from the US versus what's available in Europe. And again, like we're pressing with a snowboard house, and it's really funny because Tim and Tracy have more business than they know what to do with. And I think they like saw something in us. They must have believed in us because we're these guys.
Maybe they had a similar story. They're like, we see something in you that we went through, and we want to give you a hand.
And they do. They very much do. It's very like similar with that brand as well. But yeah, so then I remember we won this award in like 2011, and we go from 300 skis to like.
What award?
It was ISPO award. So ISPO is like this.
Yeah, that's like the German ORSIA kind of thing. It's like it's the European ski conference.
Right.
It's right after ORSIA.
And we go from like 300 skis to like 1,500 skis.
Because you win this award, everyone's like, who are these guys?
And we got pick up some distributors. We got some stuff going to Japan now.
What award was it?
It's called the Brand New competition, ISPO Brand New Award.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we won it with the shape of the Apostle.
It's like Rookie of the Year kind of thing, right?
Totally, yeah. It's like it's an introduction to the international stage.
Yeah.
And ISPO was the biggest trade show, like bigger than SIA, bigger than any of them at their height.
You don't have one behind here.
Right here, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, this one. I was looking for the brown, the one that I have. Is that kind of is the shape of the Apostle kind of similar to what it's always been? Has it changed much?
It has. Yeah, this is kind of a second version, but you got to remember like that time period when 5 points are coming out, like this is before the S7. Like this is like really early on, and so that technology, like having this ski that can kind of handle 2 conditions, was pretty like eye opening to a lot of people. So we win this award and. Instantly, we go from 300 to like 1,500 skis, right? But here we are paying for it, like painting houses. And I go back to my buddy Alex, and he's like, "Yeah, how's the trade show?" I was like, "Oh man, it was great. Like we, like We crush it. Like, I'm like, I don't really not sure what to do because we sold all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like counting like the number of houses we'd have to paint. He's like, dude, that's like 400 houses. And I'm like, yeah, it's just not going to happen. But again, like if you like really focus on the human element here, right? Like I think I'm like 25 or 26 at this age, and 1,500 pairs of skis is a pretty big number for me. It's more expensive than my house. It's more expensive than anything I've ever bought. And we have no way of like, I'm like, I don't, like, what?
You don't even know how to fund this.
No, not at all.
You've been doing this on your own before. There's no banks involved. You're just like...
And the ski production is so far in advance. Like, I either had to say yes or no. Mm-hmm. And I'm like...
Well, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Like, yeah, yes, yeah, here's that order.
It's amazing when you have no other option, what you can come up with.
It's kind of crazy. I'm not sure if that's a right option or not, but...
Well, you know what I mean? Like, if you're like, I need this money, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? It's, if you as humans are amazing in that way, when you get to a point where you have no other option, you find one.
Somehow.
Unless you're, like most people, they're like, there's always a way, right? It may not be the outcome, it may not be the way that is ideal, but it'll work out somehow.
So my lieutenant from the firehouse is a snowcat guide. Mm-hmm. And he's skiing with this guy on these skis that we had built.
He's on them?
Yeah, he's on them.
Yeah.
And he meets, our first ever investor who's like, what are those?
Oh, and he's like, hey, there's these guys that do this thing in this basement.
And I get this phone call, like I'm like sweating bullets. Like,
out of the blue.
Trying to talk to Hannah.
So serendipitous.
About how I just spent more money than our house on skis, Yeah. Like, if this doesn't work out, we may have to sell the house, And, and he's like, hey, he's like, so you'll get paid for these. You've got orders for them, right? Like, there's this gap. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, like I'll loan you the money to be able to bridge that gap.
So this guy just like, it's almost like fate.
Yeah. Like, it just like totally doesn't make sense, right? And that allows us to like, again, it's like, all right, like the brand might survive or it's going to be a thing, Mm-hmm. And
so do you like, this guy calls you up and he's like, hey, I was talking to this other dude. Did he just call you wanting a pair of skis? Or did the other guy have an idea?
The first thing he did was buy a pair of skis, yeah. And
did he have like an idea of what was going on with the company?
I think he was just interested in it, curious. Mm-hmm. He's become one of my biggest mentors still to this day.
Oh, yeah?
And still a partner with the business. But,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, just an incredible person that happened to like fall into my lap for life. And maybe you're just aligned or whatever, but unbelievable. Like, and I think it's because we took that step, like committed to this blind faith number somehow.
Yeah.
But so this goes on and
it's the secret.
Yeah.
It's the universe.
It must be the secret.
Right.
But I'm like,
did you ever read The Secret?
Oh yeah.
Do you believe in that?
Yeah.
I find, did you ever read like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
Yeah.
It's basically The Secret, like 50, 70 years, however many years before.
Oh yeah.
Before The Secret, but it just focused more on like making money.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. It's just mindset, right?
Yeah, it's whatever you want to, I think wherever you want to like really apply it.
Yeah. Put your thoughts and your energy into something and things will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, so it's like, I'm still at the firehouse and this is going on.
So 2011. This is like 5, well, so this is what, like 3 or 4 years still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2011, 2012, the brand's growing like pretty good rate. And again, like I think it's hard for people to understand. It's hard to comprehend business sometimes, but if you double your brand from 1,500 to 3,000 skis, like that's a significant number.
Did you double it again?
Yeah, things are like, we're like going up pretty quickly, right? And this is pretty early on. Like, I think when we first started, there was less than 70 ski brands or something like that at the time. And we're cruising up. And I think by 2015, it's kind of right at the boom of like the microbreweries, and there's over 300 ski brands at this point. And so things are starting to change a little bit. Like it's like a different industry than what we first started with, and the way that things are working, and it's becoming pretty competitive. Like I've never really been one that's
The craft ski industry.
It really was, yeah. Like
Yeah.
there was like this huge boutique movement, and we started just a little bit in front of that, but we're trying to not be like lumped in with some of this like new upstart that's coming out, right? Because we've had retailers, like we've had international distribution, you know, we've got Europe and Japan going at this point, and it's hard. Like it's like the local ski company, like everyone wants to sell your buddy's stuff, right? And I've always believed that like anybody who is making a living doing what they're passionate about, like that's awesome, you know? And I've never really seen it. It's not like it's like competition, right? It's like anybody who can make a living in this industry, that's awesome, man. Like good on them. But from a business and a strategy standpoint, like it's getting harder and harder, right? And we're watching like some of the models change, and the way that consumers are buying are changing. Like online's becoming a lot bigger.
And these are all things that you've been learning day by day.
And you know, and this is all like, so yeah, we're probably like up to like 2014, 2015 now, and I'm still working at the firehouse. I'm working probably 60, 70 hours a week. And like I have this vivid call at the firehouse. I'm like trying to drive a fire engine, talking to somebody on the phone. Like, all right, like this is getting
Like you got your hands free.
Yeah, like this is like a little bit
And
too far here.
And you're talking to like...
And this guy's like, I hear sirens in the background.
A distributor. And you're like, that's the fire truck that I'm driving.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
I'm on my way to a call right now.
Like, hey man, you want to hurry up with that? Yeah.
So what was it? Who was on the other line? Was it like a distributor?
I think I was talking with a distributor. Yeah. It's like, he's like, I hear a lot of like sirens in the background. I don't think I ever like disclosed that, you know. But
yeah. Was that the moment?
It was one of the moments where I was like, all right, this is going a little too far. And then I think Hannah's like...
And then you get to the call and you're like, oh, there's a dog on the roof.
Yeah. You guys really kind of got here a little too quickly.
Yeah.
It seems like not that urgent of an emergency. Yeah. But...
So you talk to Hannah.
So I talked to Hannah, and I'm like, okay, like... And I think we have like 5 or 6 employees at this point. It just made more sense for me to be at the firehouse because I had such a great...
Now, are you still working out of the underground?
We at this point we have an office, and we've built our first storefront in Breckenridge.
Mm-hmm. And the storefront is just a shop.
Just a shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
just shirts and skis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a place to like meet customers. They come in, they can demo stuff, things like that.
Yeah. And just your stuff.
Yeah, just our stuff.
So like, what was it? So a lot of. So that's where. That right there is a huge step that a lot of those other boutique brands won't do or haven't ever done.
Yeah.
Is like, what was the decision to open your own store? That's a huge part of it.
It was actually my dad, my old man. I remember him, and those words are like still running through my head. He's like, there's just a lot of people that are walking through Breckenridge. Like, I think if you just had something that people could come in and meet you guys, like, he's like, I think it'd be a different customer experience.
Right? Put a face to the brand. Right? Like, oh, you're real people. That's cool.
There's a lot of strategy there, and there's a lot of things that we'd like learn from that, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I guess we're up to this point where I'm like at this threshold where I'm like, I can't do both. And Hannah's like, well, you can kind of choose, like, you've got the firehouse, you've got like me.
Yeah.
And then you've got this like crazy ski brand thing that you're trying to do. Like, you can keep 2 of them, But and again, like, yeah.
Out of the 3, pick 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I say that. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I think. I think it's like people don't realize that, but if you put yourself in this scenario, right, where you've got this amazing job that you worked 1 out of 1,000 people get hired for, and
it's hard to turn away from.
You have a great salary, 4 days off a week. I mean, I'm working with my favorite crew. I've worked all the way up to be on a ladder truck. Like, I'm in the best place ever. And I'm going to quit this job to go chase this crazy, like, you know,
to be an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It's a really pivotal moment.
But at that point in time, it's been a good 7 years already, 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been easy, but it is growing. It's going the right way. Like, yeah.
And did you have the idea of like, oh, I could always go back?
No, I burned the bridges there.
Did you actually?
Did
you walk up being like, fuck you, you're cool?
More so, I just didn't recertify anything.
Oh.
Because I knew, I was like, if there's an option for me to go back, you know.
It's amazing. Like, I've talked to a bunch of people and they're like, you know, the moment I committed and it was only this,
yeah,
my business exploded.
Yeah. So it went the other way for me. And we had a factory that, it's really interesting with the ski business because you fund everything. Like, so through the summer, you're funding all of your expenses.
Are you like taking loans out to then pay for, and then when you get the money from the sales, then you pay off those loans?
Exactly.
That's pretty, and same thing with like clothing company, like basically shops, like, right? Like,
so we have
gear shops, that's how they work, isn't it, essentially?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So we have this factory that's like, they're like, hey, like, you know, production's running a little late, and you're at a certain point where you need 2 factories. Luckily, we have 2, and they keep dragging us along, and it gets to be like October, and they're like, hey, like, we can't build any of this order. And I'm like, I've just spent like our entire... Like, what do you mean? And they're like...
When is this?
This is 2015.
Like, when you... have you decided to stop
I
working?
left the firehouse January 2015.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Sorry, it's not funny, but...
I know.
What
yeah.
timing.
Yeah, what timing, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we lost everything overnight. Like, just gone. Like, you think about going from 30 to 75 to 150 to 300. That whole thing was gone. And we had one factory that was able to deliver part of the skis, and I'm like, we're fucked.
So you basically...
Yeah.
So you were supposed to deliver how many skis that year?
You know, we're doing like a couple thousand at this point. Like,
You got how many out?
And I think we were able to do like... I think we got like half of the models, because half the models are split. And so we're at this decision.
Is it like wine where it's like, all right, the demand is high, so we can jack up the price?
We've tried all the tricks.
Like,
yeah.
These skis are actually $1,500.
But we actually ended up, firing up our old press. And
the one that you built in the basement?
Yeah, we have a little bit better press at this point, but we're just, it's Chris and I.
And you're just 24 hours around the clock.
We're talking about 4 or 5 years ago, right? Like the brands.
Is that it?
That's not that long ago, right?
Jeez.
Yeah. The brand's at a pretty good point, and we're like doing all this stuff, pressing skis by night, and we hand pressed every single pair to dealers, and no one knew.
Did you get your orders completed?
We completed the orders.
So you basically literally rolled up your sleeves and
we're doing this,
saved your business by
doing this out of the back of the shop. And we're running skis over to our buddy's shop. You know, the guys from Weston Snowboards are like, all right, you guys can use our space. They had this little space, and one of our buddies comes down who happens to be like the fastest guy I've ever seen with a router, like this side of, it was nuts, right? And he like saves us, and we're able to like fill our dealer orders. And
is that the most stressful moment you've had in this business?
It was up there, right? Like it was the first time I've ever been faced with like, oh man, like
really hard adversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not paying myself at all. There's no salary coming in. Just trying to like, you know, meet all these commitments, and we were able to meet everything, which is pretty crazy. Like, yeah, somehow.
Is now, does that in the long run help because you haven't had to pay these factories to build these skis for you? Because they didn't build them, so you don't have to pay them.
So you get your deposit back, right?
Yeah.
Which is nice, but you spent into your operating budget. So my words are like, oh, we're fucked. Like, yeah, that was fun.
At that moment where you're like, okay, we're done.
Should have recertified this firehouse certs. Like, dang it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, Chris and I, and yeah, it was crazy, but we got through it. So that same year, we have our lease at this little shop in Breckenridge, and the shop's becoming pretty meaningful. Like, it's paying some salaries, and the landlord's like, I'm just not renewing it. I'm like, son of a, what's going on?
Yeah.
2015.
What's your deal, guy?
Yeah. And we have 2 weeks left on our lease, and I'm like, oh, we're fucked again. And this building that I've been looking at for years opens up on Main Street.
And you look with the idea of moving the shop there?
2 weeks left on our lease. And I'm like, again, like, we're doing significant sales through this little store. And this new building is like on the 100 block. It's like some of the best real estate in Breckenridge. Like, you know what I mean? If like, if you're playing Monopoly, it's like Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's a good spot.
Park Place.
But it's kind of weird. It's like this old building. It's kind of run down. And again, like, we've been through this like traumatic ski building experience, if you will, to save the business. We're all a little tired.
And now you get this other huge obstacle.
Yeah. And we're like, what are we going to do? And this spot opens up, 2 weeks left. And it's kind of weird. It's like 2 little buildings. And we're like, well, we could put the shop on the left, but we'll go on that right side. And we're like, I guess we could put a bar in.
Is that how it came together? It wasn't like premeditated. It was just like, well, this is happening. Maybe this is what we should put in there.
Yeah, like I would like to think that there's like this higher level of intelligence.
That's what I thought. I just assumed the whole time. Like, that's why this is so fascinating to me, because I know, like I said, we've known each other like a year.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time hanging out, but I've never I've never gotten into the story. So this is fascinating, because I always thought it was like a stroke of genius, but maybe I was giving you too much credit.
A little bit too much credit, yeah. A little bit too much credit.
Yeah. Because, like, in hindsight, fucking brilliant, right? Like, you're running your ski shop, but also a bar, right? So say you have a slow day behind the bar, there's a lot of people in, but you sell a couple pair of skis, then you meet your quota for the day. I think, right? Like, you have 2 specifically, like completely separate businesses running out of the same space that just have this harmonious balance.
I think what we realize, and this is, I struggled with the brand, and again, I talked a little bit about those hard years, right? Because there's all these other ski companies popping up.
Yeah.
And I think that we got away from like who we were. But when we were first building skis, right, we're like this little company in a garage. Like, I was building skis for 30 racks. Like, that was my...
What's 30 rack?
Like a 30 rack of beer. Oh. Like, I'd trade people 30 racks to press their skis.
Even though they would cost you $200.
Well, I would still, like, they'd buy the materials, and they'd bring by a 30 rack, and we'll press them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, like, when we were in that, like, that moment, we're like, we put a bar in. Like, that's us being who we are.
Because it's just getting people, you're kind of getting back to your roots. Yeah.
And that's, and honestly, like, that's when things started, like, catching traction. Mm-hmm. And
this is what, 2016?
Yeah. And we're all of a sudden, our old shop was great, but it was off the beaten path. No one really knew it was there. Our story wasn't getting out there. And now we're appealing to just a completely, like, all these different people are coming through and finding out about the brand.
What's the crowd like in Breckenridge? Like, what are the tourists like? Where are they from? Is it like a high end, like, is it like a Whistler or like an Aspen or something? Where
it's really similar. Like, it has a very similar feel to Whistler in that sense. Like, you've got a lot of high end, and then you've got a lot of like true skiers there too. Yeah. So, yeah, but again, and there's some people that came along the way that like really made that happen, because I worked in restaurants a little bit, like raising money for skis here and there, but I don't have like the bar background to make it tick and be a well-run machine. Mm-hmm. And
so how did that come into play? And like, so one of the questions that I have for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's neat learning about this, because a lot of people see you and they're like, oh, ski brand, oh, you own a bar, oh, you're opening another bar, like,
right.
Oh yeah, you must be trust fund kid. I'm sure you've heard that.
Oh, I get it all the time.
Right?
Yeah, and honestly, the better the brand's done, the more that we hear it, right? Like,
yeah, because people are like, well, I don't understand. Like I told you, like we said at the beginning, people don't understand it.
No, they don't get it.
Because it's not it's not normal. It's not the norm. Like how have you been able to sell skis and then finance a bar,
right?
And then finance this, and you moved to Canada and you opened another bar,
right?
Like what the hell, man?
And then once, it's really interesting though, but as soon as a company becomes profitable, it's a completely different beast, right? And you're not borrowing money, like you're using your own money. And you start putting that, like, again, it's hard sometimes, like with the money that comes through business, it's hard to understand. But if you're showing a 10% profit on $1 million in sales, okay, you know, that maybe not all that money is showing up in your bank account at the end of the day, but 100,000. And now what if you're doing 10 million in sales? You know, so you're putting $1 million in your bank account at the end of the day in profit. What about 20 million in sales, right?
I was going to say, there's no way you're like 20 million selling skis. Right. But still, it's just
But that gives you the idea of
yeah.
Okay, so how do these businesses start to grow like this? Mm-hmm. And you can see it when people become profitable. You can see the brands that are starting to like take off because they've gotten around that corner.
Right. It's like, for me, like it's like for regular people, right? Like, so.
And then you'll see
if I won $1 million right now.
Yeah.
I would be so far ahead. I would probably do the exact same things I'm doing right now, but I'd be so far ahead because that $1 million would allow it, or even a little bit of money. Do you know what I mean? It's like you need money to make money.
And it's so hard to comprehend. And this is me coming from a ski background, right? Where like $300 was a lot of money to me buying that first ski press.
Yeah.
It's so hard to comprehend like some of these dollars that are flowing through these businesses until you become more acquainted with it. But
so, and then you've learned along the way, like you said, you had that guy that came on, he's like your close mentor, that sort of thing. Like, have you, and you mentioned
totally,
and then another thing too is like you've mentioned investors, right?
Yeah.
Like in order to get from one stage to another, sometimes you're going to need an injection of capital.
Yeah, it's not easy at all, right? Like, and there's all these like pinch points and stair steps and strategy to it, and And
so basically, like a lot of people are like, how has he done this himself?
And banks wouldn't loan us money. They're like, you're 20 years old, like, you know, like with skis and no one's ever heard of. Like, no. I think I've had more no's from banks than to last a lifetime. You know?
So what happens then?
So again, like we're starting to
the universe provides.
Things are starting to go, like we're able to keep growing on our own cash now, and we're connecting in a new way.
When is this? Was it like 2016? The bar opens.
Yeah, there's industry problems. Like there's a major shift from wholesale at the time, which was our core business, to direct to consumer and online. A lot more people are buying online than ever before, and we show up with this new experience-based shopping, and it starts connecting in a whole new way, right?
It's interesting when you're talking about like the phases of everything from like the ski builds, right? Like in the early 2000s, you get twin tips that come through, and then you get the parabolics, you get your fat skis,
right?
But then also the way that skis are being sold, right? The
industry's changing.
Yeah, the evolution of the industry, like you were saying before, you get all these like boutique brands that you were just lucky enough to be a little bit of ahead of, right?
And the majority of our business is still especially retail, like,
right?
People will always go to a great boot fitter, right? Like, that's not going to go away.
And that's fascinating because then you get those boutique brands, and then all of a sudden you get someone like Jason Leventhal who changes the game and does it direct to consumer, and now that's kind of something that's changed as well. But at the same time, let's open a shop with a bar in it, so people can come, have a beer, have a good time. There's like, we're in a bar right now. There's skis on the wall. Like, people can have a couple drinks and be like, well, those, and keep looking at them, and then be like, I'm gonna get up and go over and flex those. I'm gonna talk about, hey, who knows anything about these, right? They're just in your face. You're looking at them, right?
So and it's interesting though, and like as all this is going on, like, you know, we're growing as a company, and I'm learning, like, again, I didn't even know what an invoice was. Like this is a real conversation. Someone's like, send me an invoice for that. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Like, I'll go look that up.
Google, what is an invoice?
I'm serious. Like that. That was my level.
I did the same. I did the exact same thing. I'm like, I need to Google. I Googled invoice templates.
Right. Ooh, send.
Yeah. Oh, look at this one. I can. Yeah, cool.
But so we're growing as a company, and I've got like major people stepping in. I mean, you just heard the story of Chris building skis to save the company, right? And again, we're going from like, we're a really unique animal because, most ski companies have 14, 15, 25 people most working for them. And we've grown to over 80 employees now.
You have 80 between the bars, between the ski development.
And that's still a very small business in the grand scheme of things. Like there's restaurants in Whistler that have more than 80 people, but based on the scope of what we're doing and, it's all over the place. Like it's a little bit, there's more complications, like you're sourcing, you're doing distribution internationally, right? Like it's a little bit, you're manufacturing, it's a little bit different. And now we're running a bar and it's pretty distracting, right? Like it's like, as much as people are like, oh, it's brilliant. It's like, actually it's not, for a lot of reasons too, because
it's crazy.
Yeah. You gotta,
because not only are you running a ski shop, but now you got to understand everything from liquor licenses and food licenses. And you got to have someone with the knowledge of a completely, you just open the door to a completely separate industry.
So we have like all these admin problems, and I'm learning a ton about leadership, and I'd learned a good amount from the firehouse. Like there's definitely things, but I'm really beginning to like question, I'm like, where is this business going? Like, what are we doing, and why are we doing it? And that's like a major piece, And so I did question that. And again, like when I was at the firehouse, I'd go to work and I knew what I was doing and I knew why I was doing it, right? I was like, I'm going to help someone today, It's pretty straightforward. Maybe it's a dog on the roof, but, for the most part, that was it. And that's when we got really into, I think we quickly realized, we're like, okay, like this business has been built by our employees. So that's where the employee ownership really starts to take off, is in this same era. And we get to a point where it's like I don't want to grow the company. I'm like, this is like, it doesn't make any sense. Like we're just making it harder.
This constant upward is just exhausting.
It's just exhausting.
So did you just get to a point where you just wanted to plateau for a while?
Yeah, and I got, there's like just issues that happen in a bar. You've seen it, right? And it's like, like, what are we doing? And I think that was a really powerful moment. And again, I go back to the firehouse, like, why are you, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? And so that's when we really realized, we're like, it's just not worth it to grow this company unless it can do something. And so you think about that and you're like, well, where are you headed? And, again, like that's that positive impact piece that we speak about, because it's so important to me that, unless we can do something with our brand, like with this reach that we've acquired, these products are going all over the world, then there's no reason, like, it's like, it becomes kind of pointless,
So there needs to be substance for you.
So we were able to start doing some fundraising. We were able to tie into the community there quite a bit more. And that just, it's really interesting, right? Like how that just starts to connect in a different way. And then the brand becomes more focused on community than it does even skis. And that it was really, it's interesting, like when you see the thought process, like you can see a tired entrepreneur, and then you see like how you go from like, all right, like I'm got this bar thing going on, I've got skis going all over the place, we've got, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, like we can do something with this company. And that's where the motivation comes from. We're like, okay, like this is cool again. And a second store.
So, obviously, like that is something that I've noticed with you, is like you need a reason, right? Yeah. Like you want to give back, like you're invested with POW, Protect Our Winters, and you just realize that, okay, you've created a community, not necessarily people that are just skiing on your skis. People are coming to your bars. People feel like a connection to the brand, but not to the brand. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and
it's more to the vibe.
It's a big piece because, I think we all believe that the connection, like we're watching this connection to the outdoors and to the mountains fade, and that's to people, right? Like people are losing this connection to the mountains, and that's a big piece of what we're trying to do right now. Is like, reinvigorate that, because when people find out about the mountains, they realize how special they are. And again, we're a tiny little company, right? Like we're non-existent in the real world, but if you can do something, like you have a purpose, it's amazing how much further you can go.
Mm-hmm. And have you found that as like that? Is that one of the moments where you've realized, oh, this is another one of those eureka moments, another stepping stone where we can see that growth, but it isn't necessarily in monetary value or the amount of skis being sold. It's a growth in a different way for the brand. It's more of like solidifying who you guys are.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're doing. And I think some of the best companies in the world can tell you why they do it. You know what I mean? And like, so probably Tesla right now would be the one on everybody's mind, right? But they're bringing electric cars like to the forefront for environmental reasons, and people align with that, and you can see it, right? You can see when it happens. And by no means are we anywhere near a company like that, but I noticed the same thing when we realized why we were doing things. And I think that there's probably a lot of people who can relate to that. Like when you realize, like, why are you telling the message of skiers, you know, what's the reason for all this? And people can understand that. It's much different, you know. It really is. Like, it's like people connect with you, your own story, in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And it was a big piece of who we are going forward. And
it's interesting how people decide how they want to connect with your story, right? Yeah. Like there could be 3 or 4 different people that connect with that story in a completely different way. It's the same way as like, as soon as an artist writes a song,
right,
and they release that song, it's no longer theirs.
Right.
And hundreds of people can interpret that song the way that they choose to.
Right.
Do you see that kind of the way that people interpret your business or your brand, or how they identify
totally,
with that brand?
Yeah, and people identify in different ways, and we understand that for sure. But I do think it's important is that people can identify with your brand in many ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you actively seek out that engagement. You know?
Yeah, well, and it's...
And that's another really interesting business point of view.
Yeah.
From a couple ways, is that this 7-4 society thing that you started is basically like a membership program,
right,
for people to get closer to the skis, which I thought was another brilliant move. Like some of the moves that you've made. It's
a different problem though, but I think we believe that people are falling out of love with skiing. The price point is too high. Mm-hmm. And so
explain the 7-4 Society. What was it?
So we just created a membership program so that instead of like buying a pair of skis outright, you can subscribe to it like you would cable TV or anything, and then we just ship you a new one at the end of the year. And it's a different way of looking at how skis are purchased, but skiing numbers are declining like at a pretty rapid rate, at a massive rate, and people are falling out of love with the sport. Like, it's a real issue. And I also think that...
Is that a resort thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely price points are going up, like $200 for a ticket. It's crazy, you know.
It's more now in some places.
Yeah, it's, how does a family and again, like I'm talking about people connecting with the mountains that's falling out. Like that's what this is all about. So, how does a brand? How do other brands? How does anyone that's like listening to this think about how do we get people to engage with the mountains in a different way? And we can't do it on a big scale. Like we're a tiny company, you know, but how do we do that in a different way? And that's one of the ways that we're trying. Like, it's a pilot program. We'll see what happens with it. But so far it's been pretty successful. So, yeah.
That was fascinating. So, like, and that's one of the things I wanted to, and I'm sure we'll have many, many conversations off the microphones about this, but it just, you're kind of an innovator in the industry. You're doing things that no one has done before, right?
I appreciate that, yeah.
Well, like opening the bar, obviously it was chance, right?
Yeah.
But then you're like, okay, let's open another one.
Right.
Let's move to Canada. Instead of opening another bar, maybe in Colorado that's closer to what we're already doing, let's go to Canada and do one there. What was that all about?
Well, I think there's a couple thoughts there, right? Like, and Jason was like his own words, have gone through my head multiple times. Jason Leventhal, right? And he did his TED Talk that no one needs more of the same thing. And I think that's really powerful words. You know, it's like, if you're trying to do something, like as a skier, as an athlete, as a mountain biker, it doesn't really matter, as an entrepreneur, if you're bringing out, like, if we're showing up as the exact same company, like imagine being like being like, hey, like, I want to bring out this fleece, and it's going to be a sweater, and yeah, it's going to be different than Patagonia's and North Face's, but it's going to be cool because it's a fleece. Like, people are like, man, like, Patagonia and North Face do that really well. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, no one really needs another fleece right now.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's very true with skis. Like, you know, that existed. That was a very defining point. I think there was like 400 ski brands at one point, and it was like, man, like,
it's too many.
Yeah, there's some really good ski companies out there that do this really well. You know, like,
was that kind of like how do we set ourselves apart?
And I don't know if it was directly like we sat down and like, how do we set ourselves apart? But I just remember like that moment when we went back to who we were, and we're like, skis and beer, like, that's who we are.
It's a solid move, man. And then you
just connected in a different
why the
way.
move to Canada? How did that happen? So I think we met skiing, which I vaguely remember.
Yeah.
We were skiing with Steph and Scott one day, just on Blackcomb. They're like, oh, this is Mike. I remember meeting and them being like, oh, this is Mike and Scott on the chairlift, and then I forgot about it completely.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I hear like rumblings. I'm like, oh, there's going to be an RMU bar in Whistler. I'm like, RMU?
Well, that seems kind of strange.
Yeah, I'm like, what's the deal with that? I'm like, skis? This is a ski company, right? And I did a little research. I'm like, there's a bar in Breckenridge. What's that deal? So I just knocked on the door one day and popped my head in, like, before you guys had opened.
I think that, you know, like, first and foremost, like, behind all this, like, I have a pretty big passion for skiing. Mm-hmm. And I think as a skier, I gotta be like, it's interesting, like, admitting some of your business decisions, but if there's any place you can be as a skier, like, this is one of the better places to be.
Yeah. You've learned that over the last year, haven't you?
Yeah. And people like to think, like, how calculated, like, how calculated are these guys? Like,
right.
Were they really?
It's more of a selfish thing. Like, well, Whistler has a lot of people. There's the tours. It's one of the biggest ski resorts in the world.
And all those analytics, like, go into.
Right. Like, we could legitimately open something here.
Right. But you could, and we'd end up not in the right position, not being who we are, like, maybe next to, like, Longhorns or something like that, right? Like, if you're just looking at numbers, that's where you'd be on the Village Stroll.
Yeah.
And
well, you found, I think, the perfect spot.
Yeah.
Right? Like based on the last year, give me a short summary of where you think you are and how you see how the last year has gone.
Well, it's pretty funny though, because
it's been about a year and a bit. You opened a bar in a new country.
And then we go into this, like, we go back to this story of the years folding by, and 2020 shows up.
Yeah. And
we invested everything that we had, our 30 skis that became 75, metaphorically, into
one bar becomes two.
Into a new location.
Yeah.
In Whistler. And then a pandemic hits.
4 months later,
a global pandemic hits.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, man, I think we lost everything again.
Did you have those thoughts?
I mean, people aren't allowed in bars. Are people going to go to ski areas? No. Bars and restaurants are not meant to shut down. It's just not how it works. Mm-hmm. You have liquor orders, you have expiring inventory. This is not how it works.
The margins for a bar are very small.
You need 100% occupancy, and they're telling us that we can't have people inside. And I was like, well, that was, you know, like, real thoughts, right? We're like, oh, that was that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and somehow I think it was a really weird year for everybody, but yeah, as things kind of shook out and some of the government programs started to come around, I mean, pretty amazing. And more so, I think the community up here, like the support that we received. You know, I think when we first opened in 2019, we were able to do a couple events. We had some really good fundraisers that I was pretty passionate about, that I think the company was passionate about, Scott was passionate about, and that came back to support us. Like, we had people buying skis from us in May just to help this location, like showing up in May when we have a line out, we're doing a...
Because you brought something to town that hasn't really been done, right? You just didn't come to open up a bar and make money.
Yeah.
Right? You wanted to create a community atmosphere. You came here wanting to become part of the community.
Right.
Right? You didn't just see an opportunity in like dollar signs.
I think that's the underlying part is
I think and that shows, right? Like, you're like, we want to be part of the community, right? And you've got the handlebar right next door too, which really helps.
It's awesome, yeah.
Right? And it's like, this is the skiers' corner.
Yeah.
Right? You found the right spot, and everything that you mentioned about, we want to just, we got to keep things, we can't outgrow ourselves, is essentially kind of the message I think you've been getting to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's the point?
Right.
And that's, people ask us, they're like, so are you guys going to do like a third and a fourth, and how many locations? Like, where's this all going? Right. And it's like,
well, if the time is right and the opportunity presents itself, then we'll investigate. Right.
How many more skis are you guys trying to make? Like, yeah, it's like, well.
So we're kind of rolling near the end of the conversation here. We'll have to do another one. I'm sure we will. Where can people find your skis?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, if you're in Whistler or Breck here, some of our really good partners like Evo, REI online, and then we've got a really amazing selection of specialty retail. So Pro Ski in Seattle, Confluence Kayaks down in Denver, Black Sheep Sports over in Munich. Those are, some of the main guys that have helped us from the beginning. And
of course, online as well, on the website.
Yeah, online, yeah.
What is it? It's RMUOutdoors.com?
It is, yeah.
Yep. And then you can find you guys at RMU _MTN_co.
I know you wanted that one.
Yeah.
But Luke's just dying right now.
You used to have, so Instagram, just type in RMU and it'll pop up. There's an RMU Blackcomb page. There's an RMU Mountain Co page that was RMU Outdoors. And I was tagging one and the other, and then you changed it. I'm like, what are you doing changing your Instagram handle? But you'll be able to find it. And if you're listening to this episode, in the intro and in the outro, which you'll hear in just a moment, there's an opportunity for you to win a pair of RMU skis of your choosing. So, yeah. Why should people enter that contest?
Why should they enter it?
Yeah.
Because you get free skis.
Yeah, damn straight. Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Yeah. So pay attention to the things I have to say soon on this episode, and we're good. But, yeah, man, we got to shut her down here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was an honor to catch up here.
We'll get another one here soon. Cheers. My friend.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.